Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fashion Decipher. My name is Sean Williams, and in this episode, we will be exploring the memoir of Andre Leon Talley. And I have two really awesome guests today, two people that I really, revere as friends, and that is Thomas James and John Holliday-Stewart. You know John Holliday-Stewart from a former episode, but we're introducing Thomas James again today. Thomas, do you want to give the audience a little bit about your background?
Well, in connection maybe to the book, I did work for the Metropolitan Museum of Art for a brief year in like a customer service role there. But my background, the three of us, as many people may or may not know, we did meet in luxury retail. And I've left the luxury retail world, and now I am a mortgage loan broker, which is something completely different, but I still like to keep my my eyes and ears on the fashion industry.
I love it. And John, how are you today?
I am good. I'm good. Glad to be back for my second round.
Love it. So let's jump right into the book. This book was it was crazy phenomenon when it came out, when it dropped this past summer, and because he actually exposed his relationship with Anna Wintour, and we'll get into that. But it also gives a little insight into Andre Leon Talley as a person, and it talks about his bio and just how he grew up. He was born in Washington, D.C., but raised in North Carolina, and his great-grandmother and grandmother basically raised him, off their pension checks and their salary from being domestic workers at the men's campus at Duke University. And he had a supplemental income from his parents. And, like a lot of people in the South, and John can attest to this, his family was church going, and it was Sunday school, it was Bible school, it was baptisms. And the one thing about anybody knows anything about going to church in the South, and if you're a Baptist, you wear your Sunday's best. So I think that's where Andre has, kind of connected his love for fashion. And that's kind of how it started for him. He was able to leave the South after he graduated, I think from Chapel Hill University, and he went to Brown. And that's where his fashion career kind of started. Anything you want to say about that, John? Growing up in the South and getting into fashion, is this something that you feel is parallel to how you kind of got into the fashion world, luxury?
I wouldn't say it's parallel, but I would definitely say that, at least speaking for me and my experience being a Southerner, it was from as long as I can remember, if you ever thought about seeing a person of color in a position of power within the fashion world, or someone who could really had their pulse on what was happening, the first person that would come to mind, if not the only person, would be Andre Leon Talley. And just having that insight into his journey, I kind of had an idea of the steps and the moves that he made to become who he is today, but to just really get a deep dive into that, it was just so inspiring to see someone in that time period coming from where he came from and the opportunities that were afforded to him, and how he really just maximized that to become the person that he is. I am just in total awe of him as a person.
No, I totally agree with that.
Right. I agree also.
That's just no easy feat for someone who is African American, and just it was, for that time period, unheard of.
Absolutely. It's also interesting how he wanted, he really wanted to be a private French teacher.
Yes.
And just really just changed, there's certain times in life when we just totally change our paths. And here, it was kind of like a gamble, and look at where he went.
And it's so interesting, Thomas, you bring that up, because my dad said, growing up in the South, because he's also from North Carolina, that they encouraged him to learn French. And he said he never understood that, and it wasn't until a lot later he connected it to the fact that, a lot of Black people felt that because Paris and France was more accepting, they believed of Black people, right? That's why they went. But, as we read on into the book, we'll realize that Andre had his own set of issues, living and working in Paris. But let's go back a little bit, only because I want to talk about him at Brown. Andre Leon Talley said he would walk around Brown University in kabuki makeup, which I love. And, you know, he would wear these like, I think he put like 3 or 4 Estee Lauder shades of deep grape on his high temples, and he Vaselined it on his face, and he had it to glass. Can you imagine seeing him walking around the campus like that? I love it. I love it, every part of it. And I think that his, you know, wardrobe caught the eye of a lot of people, that the students that went there, and he was invited to go to the Coty Awards. And when he went to the Coty Awards with some of his classmates at FIT, you know, the classmates at Brown, they took him to the Coty Awards that was at FIT. He met the illustrator for Halston. You know, of course, at the time, he was like the hottest designer in America. And they invited him to a party, a Halston party after, where he also met Elsa Peretti and Carrie Donovan. If people don't know Carrie Donovan, you know, you probably might know her from being the older lady on the Old Navy commercials.
On the Old Navy, yeah, remember, yes.
Exactly.
So I think that is so dope. Like, I mean, I don't know much about the Coty Awards, and, you know, unless it was the things that I actually read. What do you guys know about the Coty Awards? It seems like it just really was a networking spot. Thomas, what do you think?
Right. Well, I remember, like, we kind of touched on this before. It seems like when I think of them, the first thing that always comes to mind with everyone is fragrance. Like, I didn't realize that they were more like fashion geared back then. Like, you know, we'd touched on how, like, now there's so many events that there's, you know, back then there were only really shows where people in the industry would network. And now you have the Met Gala and shows, and there's just, it's such a broader space for people to network, where back then that seemed like it was really it, besides fashion shows, where people within the same industry could really mingle and network amongst each other.
That is so true. You know what I mean? And I mean, just the idea, the fact that he goes, you know, just based upon his personality and his presence, because let's face it, Andre Leon Talley has a presence. You know, he was able to meet Elsa Peretti and Carrie Donovan and the illustrator of Halston, Joe Eula, how do you pronounce his last name? And he volunteered. He ended up volunteering at the Met, you know, Thomas, where you were. And he met Diana Vreeland, and he became her favorite volunteer to help with the exhibits. And she promised him, like, what do you guys think of the fact that she convinced him to stay in New York City after a holiday break, although he didn't have a job and he didn't go home to see his family? That's a big chance you take.
Yeah, it was a huge chance, and it paid off for him in spades. I mean, you always have these, I feel everyone has those pivotal moments in their life where they come to that fork, and it's like, do I go left? Do I go right? Which choice do I make? We've all done it. I'm currently in a similar area in my life where I'm trying to decide what I want my next step to be. And he really just, I feel he took that leap of faith and just stepped out and was like, I'm going into this unknown, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen. And it was the best thing that could have happened for him.
Right. Absolutely. And you know what, also too, I think that he really, there was like a love for it that just must have always been there in order for him to, you know, there was just something about fashion that I think he was always drawn to. It was just in him. It was in his blood.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was like, you know, either I'm going to go and become a French teacher, or look at this other world that I really want to be a part of.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, making an impact on someone like Diana Vreeland, who, you know, iconic in her own right. You know, she loved his work and, you know, loved his personality, that she built him up to everybody, to all the designers like Halston, you know, Oscar de la Renta, Carolina Herrera, and she invited him to so many parties. Can you imagine being in your, from the 18 to 21 year age group, or 21 to 25, because I think it was grad school that he did this, and just meeting the likes of like Bianca Jagger and, you know, John von Furstenberg. Like, that's amazing.
It really is. It really is.
It's just,
I mean, I am at my age, and I'm not going to disclose what it is, but at my age, I run it, especially in the field that we're in luxury retail, it can be just like an average person, or it could be a celebrity. And I still become starstruck at certain people. So I can't imagine being at his age and being exposed to and networking with that group of people.
Right. And just being invited, like, you know, like, I mean, we know from just how he is from growing up and seeing him, it just seems that people, there's a warmth, I guess, to him that people just gravitate towards, and they want him to be around. And look, they invited him to all of these events and parties, and they wanted him to be part of their circle.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
No, you absolutely, I mean, I love that. And then just to know like the confidence in himself, to know like, you know what, I'm a college grad, student, and I belong here. I'm maybe at Studio 54 and I'm amongst all this like celebrity and high fashion designers, but I belong here. And I think that's like a level of confidence and self-esteem that he has. And I think that's like an amazing thing. I mean, we all aspire to be, that big. But what do you guys think about where he wrote that Andy Warhol, as we know, is famous for his oxidational paintings, and where they called them the piss paintings.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
He invited him to pee on the painting.
Right.
I would read on the subway commuting back and forth to work, and I kid you not, I read that part and almost dropped the book.
and just the way he put it, where he was like, I'll make your penis famous.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my God.
I really wasn't aware that he really got like his first break at Interview magazine. To me, I just always thought he was at Vogue. I didn't realize that how many other publications he really like edited for.
Mm-hmm. WWD and these it's amazing how his career just like catapulted after the cosign from Diana Vreeland. Like, I think one of the areas that I thought that was so interesting to me was when he talks about Betty Coutreau. She had to like put an outfit together, and she told him, meet me at Woolworths. I have to buy t-shirts. And he goes, I'm strolling through Woolworths aisles. And I just, he says he's discovering the hairnets that his grandmother wore. And he was like, world-renowned Betty Coutreau, who freely wears whatever designer she wants, is buying her clothes at the same place that her grandmother buys her hairnets. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I thought that was so on point, because it really shows you that this high and low, like shopping and, how style is internal, and you don't have to wear everything designer, but it's how you put things together is like, it really shows the type of icon Betty Coutreau really was.
Yeah. And I mean,
definitely
not to stray from the topic, but maybe it's a little bit of a stray. Mm-hmm. When I read that passage, the first thing that I immediately thought of was Sex and the City.
Yes.
And it's just, I remember
see that.
Yeah. I remember the scene from the first movie when Carrie shows them the dress that she wanted to wear, and everyone was shocked because it wasn't like, it wasn't a Vera Wang or not solid. It was just a plain regular dress that she maybe got from like the consignment store or something. And she's like, I'm just going to jazz it up with a nice pair of heels, this, that, and the other. And it's that the bride wore dressed by nobody. Right.
I love that, you know what I mean? And I love like that, that she did that. And just the fact that she mixed those Woolworth shirts with Yves Saint Laurent pantsuits, that's love amazing. Amazing.
Also too, like when he was in his younger years, how he would wear Bermuda shorts everywhere.
Yes.
I thought that was interesting.
I thought that was dope.
He would like team, whatever fabulous shirts and shoes that he had, but he would always wear everything with Bermuda shorts. And I found that to be really interesting. I never knew that about him.
Mm-hmm.
No,
absolutely not. Like, I didn't know that either. But again, that goes to having, your own style, and how it's like an internal, thing that you have. It's not about copying. It's really about knowing what works for you. And I think that's amazing. I wish I would have seen more photos of him wearing those shirts. I think there's like a few in the book, but not a lot.
Right.
What else was really interesting at that time? Meeting Manola Blahnik. I think they were headed to Fire Island. What did you guys think of that part? I mean, because we've all been to Fire Island. Like, what did you guys think about that part?
I thought it was funny how I think they drank some punch that was spiked.
Yes.
And they kind of ventured into areas where, things that happen on Fire Island happen, and they kept laughing, and the people partaking in those Fire Island games kind of like threw them out. They were like, chased them out of there. And,
Fire Island is experience. I have my own. I will never forget it. And both of you were there. So it's definitely, it was actually a time. I enjoyed myself.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I mean, never a dull moment.
Never.
No.
So I thought that was interesting because I was like, I know John and Thomas could definitely relate to this as well. What do you guys think? Just getting into like a chapter 4, it talks about like Karl Lagerfeld and Yves Saint Laurent's like relationship. And then it gets into like his relationship with Karl. Like, what did you guys think of that?
I always knew that they had a relationship. I didn't realize that they were so close.
Mm-hmm.
You know, throughout the whole book, he goes back and forth how they had a great relationship, and then, you know, Karl would just cut people out of their lives, and it just kind of went a lot of back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, but I didn't realize that he was really there in the beginning when, you know, when Karl Lagerfeld took over for Chanel, and, you know, I didn't realize what part Andre really played in it, you know, and the same thing with like Galliano. And I didn't realize that, like, how he had his hands in really helping people get to where they really needed to get. And he really didn't get much credit for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And he was there at like all those times, you know what I mean? It's
right.
Bizarre. Like, you know, the fashion world doesn't talk about it enough, you know, and maybe he needed to tell his story just for that, but they don't talk about it at all.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really was like proud of him for putting in this book is, you know, like, look, I did this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I helped them. I got this person to back this person. I found a place for them to do this show. And I never knew that. I just always assumed, you know, here he was just at Vogue and he just, you know, kind of did his Vogue things,
right?
You know, for like, you know, I didn't realize how he really, you know, helped really launch a lot of designers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Speaking at that time when he was in, you know, he's in Paris and becoming friends with Karl, you know, he talks about like the Battle of Versailles, and he talks about some of the designers, and, you know, he said Paris embraced Black culture. They took a lot of things from Black culture, you know, starting with like Josephine Baker and, you know, like her look and, you know, her as a person, because she lived there and toured there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talked about like Yves Saint Laurent being the one of the first to embrace diversity in models, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
also he spoke about Givenchy and how he also did a show with only Black models, you know, and he talked about that and the pressure he felt, you know, as a Black person being in those areas and those spaces that, you know, in America, he really wasn't able to be in. And then it led to Paloma Picasso, another designer we're both familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And he, you know, she took him to the side and said, one night at a party, and said, Andre, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you should know.
Right.
And someone is going around, the publicist of Yves Saint Laurent at the time, her name was Clara Saint, is going around telling people and referring to you as Queen Kong.
Queen Kong, yeah.
And that just like devastated him. And you know what's horrible about it, and you know we both know this, is comparing, as he says in the book, comparing a Black person to an ape is like the worst, you know, acts of racism. And then, you know, trying to dehumanize Black people, and then him, because he was just as worthy enough to be there, and they try to discredit his talent. It was like soul crushing. What did you guys think of that part?
There was the one part of the book that hit the hardest, just those two words. And only for the fact because it was, you know, it was truly racist. You know, I mean, Queen alone.
Yeah.
But to take it that, you know, if he had been himself and a person of any other color, it would have just been Queen, or it would have been making fun of his sexuality. You know, and I found that to be really the most hurtful part of this book.
Yeah.
I really did.
That was very damaging. What did you think, John?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad he included it because it really showed you the good and the bad that he had to navigate his way through for his career, but they didn't make it any easier to read. It was like, why did she have to go to that point?
Right. And it's definitely an area that, you know, it's something that Black people have to experience, that because, you know, they don't want to, a lot of people who are racist don't want to believe that you belong there on merit, you know, and then if they can take that away for you any way that they can, they will try to do so. But, you know, what did you guys think about how he left? You know, like, did you believe, like, was a good decision to leave based upon that? Do you believe he should have stayed and fought? What did you guys feel about his letter of resignation that he left at the office?
another thing, was this also the same time that they also spread a rumor that he was sleeping with all the designers, or was that later on?
That was also part of it.
Okay, so was the same? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, it was soul crushing to him. It was.
Would you guys have stayed? Like
I don't know.
It's so hard. It's so hard because part of me,
I mean,
would definitely have stayed because I feel like I would have earned my place to be there. But to also go into that Shark Tank day after day and deal with those people and know like the things that are being said behind your back. And it's like, at what point do you stay and fight? And at what point do you turn and walk the other way? Not because you're afraid of the fight, but just for self-preservation and just to save your sanity.
Yeah. So you guys both you think you would have stayed, John Thomas? What would you have done?
I mean, I probably would have stayed. But the same thing. I mean, I think at that time, and especially for him, it was just like, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't need to deal with this.
Yeah.
And, and I think in a way too, I think as hurtful as that was, I think he knew he was better than all of them.
Right.
And, I think that's what gave him, okay, let's move to let me move to the next chapter.
And that's exactly what he did.
I don't need to be subjected to this.
Yeah, and he did that. And I think that it was really amazing that Karl Lagerfeld let him stay at his house for the next 3 months until he figured out his next move. And that's when he headed back to New York. And he had got a call from Eunice Johnson of the famed Ebony magazine. And she had him fly out to Chicago to meet her and her husband. And they hired him on the spot. So that, him leaving was able to connect with Ebony. And he had a small career there. They went to Paris together, and he helped her pick out clothes for the Ebony Fashion Fair show.
Right. That traveled around for years. And And I did not know that. And,
it wasn't that amazing.
Neither did I.
And she was also one of the women here in the States that bought all the couture.
Yes. Yes, and they launched a lot of careers like Pat Cleveland, which John and I met at a museum, and Stephen Burrows, the designer, Scott Barry, the designer, B. Michael, those are all, they supported, that fashion fair show supported so many Black designers, and I think that it was necessary at the time. I mean, it's necessary now, but it's it's absolutely necessary.
Yes, agreed.
But he didn't stay there long. He ended up leaving there, and
I think it was
his salary was a lot.
9 months, maybe. I think he was there.
Yeah, because his salary was big. And I understand that. He comes with all that, experience and education. But I thought that was an amazing feat. What do you think about? Because his next chapter, he moves into making his way to Vogue and meeting Anna Wintour for the first time. And he says he was on his way to the elevators, and she was just named
passed each other.
Right. And Vogue just named her the creative director, and they didn't know each other. And he said they just had this, passing by, but then they had ended up forging a relationship over the years. What did you guys think of that? Of him making it to Vogue? And he was saying that Vogue is such an institution, and he became the most important male fashion journalist at the time, especially being African-American, which is big.
What's funny, and even the same way, how I touched on the way he wrote about Karl Lagerfeld, it was always back and forth. He would say nice things about Anna Wintour, and that, don't believe all of the stuff that, people had said about her and wrote books about her. And then he would paint a side of her where she wasn't exactly the easiest person to work with.
Do you think that he struggled?
I think he just didn't want to say anything bad about her.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the impression I got from the book. It was the same thing with Karl Lagerfeld. He would write about the great relationship they had, but write about what those two did to others, and then eventually did to him. So it just, I kind of when I finished the book, I was kind of well, were they really that close? Were they really not that close?
Right. You were kind of unsure if that was a real relationship or not a real relationship.
Or
friendship.
if he, if he just, like, I don't think he wrote anything bad about her. I really don't. But I kind of walk away like still not believing that was the real relationship that they had.
Yeah, you think it's more superficial? Because I feel like I agree with you. I feel like he struggled with trying not to like damage their relationship so bad. Maybe he felt like an opening, like he was hoping that like maybe they can, rekindle their friendship at some point.
Right.
But the way it was received, like, I mean, we're getting towards the end, but the way the book was received, they just act like it was like sacrilege. Like every review, act like he did this backslap to her. Like, how dare you divulge the secrets of Vogue in your relationship? And that's like the most ungrateful thing that you could do. And it was so like harsh because I didn't think it was that bad.
I didn't think it was that bad at all.
Agreed. I feel like, at least in my opinion, I feel from the things and the rumors that people have heard regarding Anna Wintour for years, I feel that how he portrayed their relationship and her in the memoir was a gloss over as to how it really is to be in that circle with her.
Yeah.
I feel like he could have probably went a lot deeper than he did. And whatever reason it was, whether he didn't want to like further damage the relationship or he was being kind because of the years of the relationship that they have, or whatever his reason were for not going as deep as I feel that he could have, is of course up to him to do because it's him telling his story.
Right.
But I definitely do not feel that he maligned her in any type of way that was just like unfair or cruel. I feel that he actually did her a favor.
Yeah. I agree. I think the way he wrote about her, he put her more in like a positive light than anything in a negative light. And
exactly,
and I mean, even after when he wasn't let go, let's just like when it came down to like with the Met Ball, with him no longer being invited and doing the interviews on the stairs, and the way he found out, and them no longer speaking, but yet he still continued to go to fittings with her for her clothes. And I don't know. It just.
First, let me say, like, Thomas, like, I agree with you that the way they handled him in that part was so disrespectful, like to call him and say, oh, you don't want to do this anymore. What? Who? Like,
right.
How are you going to tell me what I don't want to do?
You know what? Right. And wait, they didn't call, he called them.
Yes.
He hadn't heard from them. And he's like, what's going on? Like, what's going on with the Met Gala? And they were just like, oh, well, we felt like, this is beneath you now.
Yeah. I mean, floored. Like, that's not how you handle him of all. I mean, that's really shouldn't how you handle anyone at a job. Right. But that's not how you handle him. Like, I just think that was so disgusting.
I do too.
It was low. Someone who had dedicated
their life
so much to that publication and everything involving it, and the years and the sacrifice and the hard work and everything that he gave them, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and that is how you treat him. It's not like he's someone who just walked in off the street. This was someone who had years of service with that, who could have left at any time and took his knowledge and his connections with him and went anywhere else. And it's like, regardless of how personal relationships fall apart or evolve over time, you still, I feel, regardless of what you're in and what you're doing, you have to maintain a level of respect. Yeah, and that was it was blatantly disrespectful how they treated him.
Yeah, that just was not necessary at all. I mean, listen, Andre Leon Talley at the steps of the Met Gala is a full entity. Like, he's just, I remember his reaction to Rihanna wearing that, very long yellow dress.
The Chinese year.
Yeah, like I feel like, his just response to that is like, you watch it for that. You know what I mean? Like, so I just don't see where they felt that it was beneath him. That just was bizarre to me, and
very much.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't get that at all. But what do you guys think about when he said that Anna Wintour was really the person who basically saved John Galliano from that huge, thing that happened, because she was, I remember her making all these like I wouldn't say PSA, but she made a lot of statements in support of like he was going through like a tough time, and I think we need to give him a second chance. And like, he did credit her for basically like saving his career.
He did, and I also didn't, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't realize that that he really kind of helped start Galliano's career.
Mm-hmm.
He found a space for him to do his first show. He found a backer to do the second show. I didn't realize that how important of a role he played in Galliano getting his start.
Yeah.
With with Anna Wintour trying to, I don't really remember her like really going out and really, trying to bring him back into the good graces. I really just don't remember that as it was physically happening.
Mm-hmm.
The Galliano, I mean, look, he's brilliant. He messed up.
I think he's at, what is that, Margiela right now, right? I think that's where he's been designing for like since Anna Wintour got him, back into the fashion thing.
Right.
Yeah, because he was at Dior at the time. I thought it was funny, like when he talked about like when Andre Leon Talley talked about like the models and what they eat.
Yes, yeah.
That was hilarious because they was like, he wrote like people believe that models are eating like salads and
Diet Coke.
And he was like, he had to sit down for a bucket of KFC.
Yeah.
I love it.
And
love that.
Also touching on the eating, the
Mm-hmm.
one, as we all know, like he became an emotional eater.
Right.
And whereas what I found interesting is that most people within that industry turn to substance abuse rather than food. And like both him and Karl Lagerfeld like kind of really turned to food rather than turning to drugs.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I don't know, that struck me as like I found it like comforting that like, oh, I'm so glad like he didn't get involved, he didn't go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas most people within that industry do.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point, that he didn't dip into because it was around. I mean, if you went to Studio 54, it was around.
Right.
Yeah.
He writes about it. That, and I thought it was always like, I thought it was said too that he really never had any like romance.
Oh my God, that broke my heart.
Life. I mean, he really, there's not one mention of, there was a mention of a first date, I think he talks about at one point, but there was never like in his life, like fashion was his love.
Yeah.
Working within that industry was his love, and there was never there was never like a physical love there.
Yeah,
never like that deep emotional companionship with someone.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sad to me. I felt really sad for him because his professional life was so on point and just amazing. And it was like, how is his life like when he leaves that to go home and he doesn't have someone to share that with? It really made me just like, oh.
It's heartbreaking. And, and I don't know if it had to do with him saying very early on, and we didn't speak about this in his life, that he was taken advantage of by a neighborhood friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And maybe that's the thing that when that happens, and I don't know, but from what I understand, that you don't know what love is because you think that's that, and you didn't get to experience falling in love. You actually got taken advantage of. And maybe that was part of his emotional eating, that, he didn't know, he doesn't know how to love. His mother was very strict with him. He didn't really have a good relationship with her. So there's also some issues with learning how to love there as well. So, like that structure, sometimes a lot of that comes from your childhood. You have those issues that you don't take care of. And that just only makes it worse later on in life. And maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, that's also true.
So sad though.
Mm-hmm.
I just, I'm not understanding. But, skipping back, what do you guys think of when he talked about Princess Diana? Speaking about like, talking about like, the food, and we talked about the models, and she was saying like, is that all that is here is lettuce? Oh, I thought that was so funny. It gave her some, like, you forget, the type of person that she was, and it,
right.
reminds
Well,
you.
didn't he knock a glass of red wine on her also?
Yes.
And she was just like, spotted it up and just said it's fine, so.
It really shows you the type of, personality, that she had. And I think that's amazing. What do you guys, talking about his emotional eating, what do you guys think about the intervention that Anna Wintour had with him? I mean, it was kind of abrupt. What do you guys think about that? Like, she called him into the office and was like, oh, we have to talk. And he's up there thinking, can you imagine? You're going to work and you're like, oh, I'm going to get an award or because that's what he thought. You know what I mean? He was like, oh, I'm going to get an award and it's going to be, this wonderful thing. And he gets there and they're all like, you're too fat and you need to lose weight. Like, what do you guys think of that?
I think it just goes hand in hand with that industry. It's, I think it's always been like that. And I mean, even now, now you see more dimension on runways with, people's body shapes and stuff, but I still think it's still there. I mean, even though it's come a long way, I just think, even like when Karl Lagerfeld lost all that weight, remember? And, he was down to like a woman size 7 or something, it just, I think it just goes hand in hand with the industry that, if you're a bigger person, you don't belong in that circle
at all.
Right.
It's an age thing and a weight thing, because being
you're
old is an
right.
issue, in that industry is all that's, a big issue, it's like a very youth centric field.
Yes.
So I thought that was kind of abrupt. I mean, he says later that he understands that she did it because she did it out of love, but I just feel like the way Anna Wintour did things was so cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, this is love. I hate to see what hate is like coming to you.
And
it's
yet,
so
and he
bugged.
still wouldn't say anything like bad about her though.
No.
I really don't think he said like really anything bad about her.
No.
Just that she would give, like everyone there would give each other the silent treatment is what it seemed like. If you didn't get your way or something of yours got cut, from making it into the magazine, it was like, some people threw like little tantrums, or you just got the silent treatment and you stopped speaking for 3 years, which,
it's so toxic.
One thing though that I did find fabulous and that I don't know, but at some point in my life, I'm going to have it done, that he would line his suits with Hermes scarves.
Yes.
Oh.
And, I read that and I was just like, wow, I have to do this.
I love that.
I have to at least have one blazer lined in, like in Hermes scarves. Have to.
That is such a genius idea, honestly. That makes me think about remember when he talked about having the car accident in Mississippi, and he cared more about his LV luggage.
His luggage.
Yeah, that accident.
I'm sorry, but if I have Louis Vuitton luggage, I'm going to be worried about it as well. So.
I know, the same. I probably would have said the same thing, but the way he describes it, how he's hanging there upside down, and they rescue him, and he's like, "Is my luggage okay?" And the guy's like,
"Where's my
luggage?" And he's like, "It's Louis Vuitton," It's
it was like, "Your car is total." He was like, "Yeah, but my luggage is Louis Vuitton."
Exactly. I can easily get another car. This is Louis Vuitton luggage.
Right. What did the two of you feel about how the relationship with him and Karl Lagerfeld ended?
Karl is he was such a paradox of a person. Like, it's so weird. Like, Andre Leon Talley said that he went out of his way to purchase this like vintage pen for him. And he thought that this gift would be like the gift and he would love it. And he said like within the next couple of days, he gave it to somebody else. And that's something that he did. Like, he said that, which is very narcissistic trait, that he only cared about it, Karl only cared about gifting and doing people favors if he can control how it was done.
Right.
And not how Andre gave him something from his heart and Karl could care less about it. Or he gave you things and then he wanted it back. Who does
Right.
that?
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that like he would give people like rugs and trunks and then be like, oh, I need that back now.
I'm like, was it a gift or was it a loan? Like, why are you asking for this back?
Exactly. It was not clear. And you know what I mean? Like, and he was so generous, but his generosity had like a limit or something, or like a ceiling. Like it hit a certain level.
Like a string attached to it, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
But I mean,
He
bizarre.
could pull at any moment.
But like their real like falling out that stopped them speaking was when he asked for money for them to share that exhibit, which I thought was really odd that would end a friendship.
Yeah, that was a weird. I guess if Carl felt like if he's not centered in whatever it is about, then he doesn't want to be a part of it.
Part of it.
That was weird. I didn't understand why that was the thing that, of all things, that was the thing that kind of killed their friendship. That was weird.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. It just seemed very, I was like, really? This is like, because I'm waiting through the whole book to get to the part where, I'm expecting this big blowout. And I was like, really? Because, that to share an exhibition with someone just seemed a little strange to me.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely didn't understand
agree.
that part at all. I did also like that he talked about meeting Lady Chablis from that movie,
Yes.
Midnight of the Garden of Good Eden. That is my movie. What? I fell in love with her myself. Like after watching it, I was like, "Who is Lady Chablis, and why isn't she on other things?"
Yes.
And didn't he take Valentino with him?
I was floored at that because I was like, I totally forgot. It's not until someone says like they talk about like Savannah, Georgia, or something that it dawns on me about that movie because that's where it was filmed. But I totally forgot. I wonder what she's up to. I really should have looked that up. I thought that was an amazing like shout out because I was like, I don't remember that at all. Anything else that you guys feel like stood out? Like
I'm gonna tell you that usually when I read with a highlighter, and there's one
me too.
there's one ending of a chapter that really like touched me, and I highlighted it. And he wrote, "Life changes, life has to go on. You have to keep going. I too am a sinner, flawed and fallen from grace, getting up and trying for salvation over and over." And I don't know, that just really hit me. And, I saved it.
No, I wrote that down too, actually.
It just really hit me when I got to that. And it was right. And you know what? It was right after, it was during the chapter when he was talking about how Anna Wintour was trying to save Galliano's graces. And I don't know, it just stood out to me. And I was like, oh, I got to highlight this. So
I too thought that was a memorable part. I mean, because we all struggle. Like, John also mentioned earlier that we're all making these decisions right now in our career. Thomas, you already kind of made your decision. You kind of, pivoted out of luxury retail. And I know John and I are doing our thing, but, you're faced with these like questions and these huge life questions. And you're like, if I go this way, this could happen. If I go this way, this could happen. But, whether you want to stay in limbo or you make the decision, life is moving without you. And it's either you get going or you just get left. Like it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you just got to get in the ride and fasten the seatbelt, and that's it.
And just deal with what comes with it. Like comes what may, as my grandfather would say. What do you guys think of like getting to now, like with, reading everything about the book and how Vogue and Anna Wintour handled him? I know he talked about in chapter 16, he talked about Vogue starting their own podcast. They had like huge roster of fashion designers like Tom Ford and people who have huge followings like Kim Kardashian, Marc Jacobs, Alexander Wang. And he would always send Anna like people he thought that would be interesting to interview, and she just always like poo-pooed it. It was like, no, because he wanted like Missy Elliott or Maya Rudolph. And she more or less was like, no, stick to people we know with inside of fashion. I say that to say, what do you think about how Anna Wintour values Black creatives? And, for him, I think she should have valued his opinion more when it came to that podcast. If he was hosting it, he should have had a choice in who to interview, because maybe he knows someone that she doesn't realize that the public loves. You got to take a chance on that. And, I say that to say, speeding forward to this year with Black Lives Matter movement and, you know, all that went on this past summer, you know, Anna Wintour herself made an apology to Black creatives, you know, talking about how she didn't really support them as much as she should have. And she said, I quote, I want to say plainly that I know Vogue has not found enough ways to elevate and give space to Black editors, writers, photographers, designers, and other creatives. We have made mistakes too, publishing images or stories that have been hurtful or intolerant. And she takes full responsibility for those mistakes. And she goes on to say, it can't be easy to be a Black employee at Vogue, and there are too few of you. And she says, I know that it is not enough to say that we will do better, but we will. And please know that I value your voices and responses as we move forward. Why did it take this? You know, she had Andre Leon Talley there and didn't value his voice. Why? Like, do you believe it now? Like, do you guys believe that she's going to do this? No. Okay.
No. I don't either. I don't believe I really think it was just because she had to put out a PR statement, and she did.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm hoping that things would change, and that that they'll give everyone a chance. You know, I mean, that they'll showcase works of everyone, because I mean, really, it's the end of 2020, and you know, things really have to change. They really do.
Yeah.
And they do. I mean, she had Andre Leon Talley working at her side for how many years?
Yeah.
There was no reason why it should be so disproportionate in terms of people of color working for your publication.
Right. I agree.
And then to piggyback on what you said earlier, Sean, he's the host of the podcast. He should have been able to have a voice in who he had on as his guest to interview. Not only because it's his show, but you have to give him a little bit of control and leeway to go out and make this work for what he feels is going to be the best way to go. And I feel like with her, it comes back to a whole sense of control.
Right.
And she'll give you enough control over things to whereas you can feel like you've grown and flourished, but she'll never give you that last little bit that you need.
Just enough to hold you underneath her is what you're saying.
Exactly. She'll give you enough control to grow, but not enough to where you could grow to the point where you may eclipse her.
Right.
I mean, you that even goes to, like, you know, the film and the novel, the 2003 novel, The Devil Wears Prada, and the film came out in 2006 about Anna Wintour, you know, loosely based upon her. And I even think Andre said that, you know, he talks about, like, you know, the assistants running in the hallways, and he says he never seen an editor run and dash into Anna's office, but you would be walking fast. But you didn't run in your stilettos, but you would be walking fast. So, like, maybe, you know, even in that movie, if he says that, is definitely some of that movie was absolutely true. That really goes to show you that, you know, maybe she, you know, isn't being sincere. And I agree with you both. Like, I just don't see it. Do you guys think that there needs to be a change at Vogue? Like, do you think that for herself, it's time for her to move on? You know, they've been under the helm of her for so long. Can she give a fresh breath to Vogue like they need?
I feel and I in no sense would want to discredit or take away from anything that she's done, because if she wasn't good at what she did, she would not have been there for as long as she has been. And Vogue is an institution. But I mean, I also believe that at some point it's time for you to lead a party and go sit your ass down. And she's had an amazing run, but I feel that as the world is shifting into new platforms in terms of social and new and just different causes, and everything is so much different. I mean, just the things that we've experienced as people over the last year alone. I feel that it's time for someone with fresh ideas and that fire in their belly to just really take it to the next level, to come in and take the reins and lead Vogue into the future.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. It needs It needs fresh blood. It does. It needs, like you said, it needs someone more, I think, with their pulse to the, with their ears and eyes to the ground and what's really going on, and not worrying about couture fittings.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
I mean, really it's not the world, yeah, it's a small percentage of the world, but it's really not the world that everyone lives in.
No.
And what do you think about like the thing with Vogue is, it's still a paper, a magazine, like with everything being on social media. Do you think that in general that it's not keeping up with the wave? Because I don't know if the Vogue Instagram page keeps up with the wave of fashion, the way as much fashion is turned out on social media consistently. I don't know if they're keeping up with that. What do you guys think of that? Like magazines versus social media?
Well, I think they could probably show more fashion if they really kept up with it on social media, like you were saying. I mean, every hour, every minute, someone is showing something new or something they just designed, or I think they're really missing that. They're missing that whole atmosphere.
Yes,
really.
absolutely. I would hate to see them go 100% digital, because call me a dinosaur or a relic, I still like having the feeling of like turning a page.
Right.
Me too. But I still like magazines, but
I would agree with Thomas. They should do a better job of working their social, because we're a digital age. Things happen so often, so fast, and you have to utilize that, because by the time you go to print and the next issue comes out,
it's
16 things have happened.
Yeah.
And that one thing that was hot in that moment when it happened is now ice cold and been replaced by 5 other things.
Yeah.
Right. It's, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but it's not really like her as an editor that really calls the shots as to what's going on. It's the people and the designers now, I really think,
right.
and
that's accurate.
And the industry, your music industry, your movie industry. That's where most people get their fashion influence from now.
Yeah.
They don't really turn to like a designer. They're like, oh, look, so-and-so is wearing so-and-so. Wow, I want that. They don't just go to like, oh, look at what this designer's doing. They're like, wow, look who's wearing this designer.
That, you know what? You're actually right. Because if you think of all the, Instagram influencers or micro influencers, like they're making a bigger impact than most magazines. And I think they need to tap into that more, in a way that connects more with millennials and Gen Y. And I think that they also know that those two generations are very big on transparency, and they're very big on, knowing what a company stands for. So I think, they took a hit, this summer. And I think in order not to look archaic, they do need to make some really big changes across the board, in my opinion.
I agree. I totally agree. Maybe bring him back.
What?
You think you should go back though? Like, what do you guys think?
I would make them. I
wouldn't be
but
surprised.
You would have to damn work for it. You would have to work for it. You would have to give me the sun, moon, stars, and 5 or 6 mountain ranges for me to come back.
Look, how many times did he go back?
Yeah.
It's like at least 4 or 5 times, right?
It was a lot of times that they did stop talking, and she called him up out of the blue.
That Vogue is in his blood.
Yeah.
It's in his blood.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Where would you guys like to see Andre Leon Talley go? Because I know, John, you and I both seen him in the Village. When he was at the library in the Village. Like, where would you like to see his career go after this memoir? Whether it was received well by certain people or not. Like, what would you like to see him do, if possible?
This is me being completely, maybe petty, for me to say this. And I know it kind of goes against what I said regarding Anna Wintour. But I would like him to, I would love it if he took her place.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Look, everyone loved the Met Gala interviews that he would do. I wouldn't find it far-fetched. I would love it if he had, a weekly show, or,
Yes.
or just like during award season, like, how, E has this and that, he just has his own thing, and it's just him, because, everyone loves him.
Yeah. I totally agree. He's such a presence, and he is such a great storyteller. John and I both know he's such a great storyteller. God. Like, I totally agree with you. If he had some sort of weekly show, whether that's YouTube, whether it would be IG stories, something. Like, I don't know if it's just him or something.
Someone needs to come to him, and they come up with a partnership that really will capitalize upon his knowledge and just the people that he knows and the experiences that he's had in his life. I mean, so much for him to share and do. And I feel like we haven't even, as long as he's been in the industry, I still feel like we haven't even, like, we've barely scratched the surface with him about what he's able to do.
I
totally agree with that.
And I'm sure there's a lot more stories too to be told. I mean, he, in just this book alone, I mean, come on, there's a lot more that he hasn't told us yet. So.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm hoping that, agreed, Thomas, like, I'm hoping that he already has like a second memoir somewhere. And then, like, it gets released later.
He does a lot now with Savannah, with the
museum in the college,
the Savannah College, right?
Yeah,
and I mean, it seems like he kind of enjoys that, like, putting together like these retrospects and teaching, and I mean, I would like to see him continuing going down that path and just giving his knowledge.
Yeah. I agree with you, because I think they did an exhibit on Oscar de la Renta, and I think you really want to give people their flowers while they're here. I wish a fashion would embrace him more, whether they agree on everything he says or not. He's a living legend, and I think people really need to
respect that.
Yeah, and they need to embrace him. And I mean, he's here and he's willing to work. The man is willing to talk about fashion at any time. And I just think there's so many platforms that could tap into that. Like you said, maybe the college in some way could do more, or maybe he can give like classes virtually, even if he never had to leave his home. Now with COVID, there's so much virtually going on that maybe there's something that he can do with that. I just would like to see him not like retire to the shadows. I just really would like to still see him active all the way up until he can't do it anymore,
I agree.
Yeah, 100%.
So I love it. Any last words that you guys want to say about the book, or about Anna Wintour, or like, anything in fashion, related to any of these things you want to say before we close out?
If you haven't read the book, you need to read the book, listen to the book, however you take in knowledge. It needs to be on your to-do list as soon as possible. I mean, even if you're not someone who's enamored by the world of fashion, just to hear this man's story and to see this glimpse into his life is worth the time for you to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, John. Like, it just was such a good read. And you said, like, again, you're absolutely correct. Like, let's not take Audible out of it, because I think he even narrates it. And he brings his whole life into it. Yeah, I listened to like a sample of it. So you hear it in his voice. So, like, I think that it's either way you like you say, you take in information, please do so. It is worth the read. It's a great book. I agree with Thomas. I wish he would have said more, maybe been more open about the relationships that he has had, especially with Anna Wintour, and, hopefully like he'll write something else, and if not, just definitely like deep dive into this one.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you guys both for appearing on Fashion Decipher. I love you both.
I love you too.
And I love you as well.
Yes, you guys are the best. I need to have you guys back. Promise that you're coming back.
Yeah, definitely.
Of course.
Oh, I love it. Anytime.
All right. Okay,
this was
guys.
round 2 for me, and I'm ready for round 3.
I know that's right.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for number 2.
Okay, so guys, we'll have them back on. Thank you, Thomas James and John Holliday-Stewart again, and we will speak to you next week. Hi guys, it's Sean. Make sure you visit our website, fashiondecipher.com, to get a visual on what we're talking to you about. Check out pics from events, of guest speakers, and exhibits. If you miss anything we post, you can visit our archives page. Also, while you're there, hit that subscribe button, leave your email, and if you like, a comment. Tell us what you think or what you would want to hear on an upcoming episode. Don't forget to follow and friend Fashion Decipher on social media. Check out what we're up to. Speak with you next week.